Hey everybody, before we get into the Season 2 recap of Yellowjackets, if you need a Season 1 recap, just hit the tab in the upper right-hand corner. It'll take you right to it. Season 2, we're going to pick up with the flashback 2 months after the events of Season 1. The girls are dead in the middle of winter, and they're struggling a bit, especially Shauna. She's struggling with the fact that her best friend is dead, and she feels like she's part to blame. She copes with it by going outside where Jackie's body is and talking to it as if it's still alive, even though she knows it's not. She tells this dead Jackie all about how her and Jeff became an item, why it happened, but the fact that she's talking to a dead body is cause for concern for the other girls. Although Ben points out, guys, that's how she's coping. As far as Ben's concerned, they have bigger issues, like food. They're running out of it, and they're also getting on each other's nerves quite a bit. One girl in particular named Crystal will not stop singing. It's driving everybody up a wall. At one point, Misty gets the job of being sent out to the cold to grab some water for the umpteenth time that week, and she's miserable, and she overhears Crystal singing and just snaps at her. She ends up telling Crystal, "I can't sing," and Crystal, just kind of looking for a friend, says, "Well, I could teach you." So it seems like at least Misty has one ally, because the girls are still pretty pissed off at the whole poisoning the soup fiasco. It's not all bad, though. One person who's doing much better is Van. Face looks pretty healed up. And her and Ty are still a hot item. Although Ty's alter ego at night is becoming a slight issue. She gets pretty violent. And while she's sleeping with Van, she does think it's a bad idea because she has a tendency to kind of attack her a little bit. But Van is not scared of her at all. Even one night in particular, when Taissa wakes up, starts hooking up with Van and biting her lip pretty hard, causing it to bleed, Van still says to her, "I'm not scared of you. I'm not leaving you." And that's a night where Van tells Taissa for the first time, "I love you." It's adorable if you don't know the whole backstory of what Taissa's actually capable of. The bigger issue, though, is the lack of food. Every day, Travis and Natalie go out, looking for not only food, but also any sign of Javi. And so far, they've come up completely empty. Before they do go out, they get this weird sort of blessing from Lottie. It's really bizarre. It involves Lottie pricking her finger, putting the blood in some water, and then Natalie and Travis drinking it. Natalie doesn't really think it's doing anything, but as Lottie points out, you keep coming back alive, don't you? They do. Although they also keep coming back without food. Natalie, though, is getting pretty good at charting different areas, figuring out where they've been and where to go to next. She's been kind of putting a map together with Ben. And Ben has to break the news to her that Javi's probably dead. I mean, it's almost impossible to think he survived the winter out there alone. And Natalie tells him, "I know that, but I don't want to dash Travis's hopes." One night, as Trav and Natalie are staring at the fire, Trav just comes out and says, "I know you think he's dead." And she doesn't deny it, she just states the facts. It's been 2 months in this cold. And that's when Travis seems to have a panic attack. Lottie rushes over to help him out, to calm him down. And her exercises not only work, but they give Travis a vision of a massive tree stump with a bunch of candles. Not only does it work, but Travis ends up getting a boner from it. That's how exciting this vision was. When he finally kind of snaps out of it, Lottie just tells him, "Your brother's alive." "I know he is." And Natalie rushes after Lottie, pulling her aside and said, "What the hell are you doing? You're giving him false hope." Lottie looks at her and says, "What do you want me to say? I said what I felt." And Natalie says, "I want you to say less." The next day, Travis and Natalie head out as they always do, but Natalie ends up coming across something really bizarre. The entire area is covered with snow, except the foot of this one tree, where moss continues to grow. Travis doesn't really think anything of it and says, "Come on." But the fact that they're not bringing back food is starting to really make some people go crazy, like Shauna, who ends up going out one time, talking to the dead body of Jackie and accidentally knocking it over. And when she does that, Jackie's ear falls off because this body has been dead for 2 months. So what does Shauna do? Well, she decides to eat it. Now, present-day Shauna is dealing with the fact that she murdered her ex-lover, and the cops might be calling for her. So she's enlisted Misty to help her out with the interrogation process, trying to figure out what the cops might ask so that she has the proper answers for it. Shauna, though, does seem like this is a little ridiculous. She feels like they were careful enough, and Misty says, no, I feel like we missed something. She asks Shauna if she got rid of all of Adam's stuff, and while Shauna says yes, she does hesitate, leading Misty to believe that there's no shot in hell she got rid of all of it, covering her tracks. And it's true. Shauna didn't. She's got some of Adam's belongings in her safe, and then she remembers the art studio. She calls up Jeff for help regarding that front. They head there to see what they find, and what they find is a little troubling because Adam was painting a bunch of pictures of Shauna. Different kinds of pictures. Pretty clear if the cops start looking at Shauna and they see the paintings, they're going to put two and two together and figure out these two were together. It's also really awkward for Jeff. I mean, he's handling the situation pretty well, but this is just another shot at the ego. So Shauna tries to make him feel better by saying that she was always worried about Jeff with another guy, but it also kind of turned her on, the idea of it. All this murder, all this adultery, all these paintings, even the weird one, ends up leading the two to hook up right then and there, with Jeff bending her over and giving her 4 good minutes. Once they wrap that up, they realize, yeah, we do have to do something about these paintings, and they simply ruin them. They then head home, they get the rest of Adam's stuff, and they start to burn it in their barbecue, while also making hot dogs to make it look like they were actually cooking. They sit down for dinner that night, and Shauna and Jeff are acting like it's business as usual, which is driving Callie up a wall. She already confronted Shauna about Adam, but Shauna didn't own up to the fact that she was the one who killed him. She knows, though, that something is going on, and the fact that her two parents are acting like it's business as usual really piss her off. She does get confirmation that her mom had something to do with it when she sneaks out, looks into the coals, and finds Adam's burnt driver's license. While Shauna, though, thinks that they've taken care of everything, Misty just couldn't sit on her laurels. She headed to that local citizens detective forum that she checks out all the time, and she found Adam's case and a really troubling post from a guy who was able to locate Adam's credit card statement and figure out that Adam was clearly seeing somebody by some of the purchases. This guy points to the fact that Adam must have had a lover, and maybe the girlfriend did it. She goes and talks to Natalie at the motel about it, only to find out that Natalie isn't there. So she goes to the front desk asking where she went, and after basically blackmailing the guy at the front, she finds out that Natalie checked out the previous night, paid in cash, left. And Misty finds that super weird that Natalie would leave without telling her. So she goes to the motel, starts looking around, and sees that somebody must have broken in because there's wood chips on the ground, the door frame looks messed up. And as we know, somebody did break in. They kidnapped Natalie, and they took her to what looks like a retreat space in the woods that's run by Lottie. We get a look at what happened with Lottie once the girls were found and rescued and returned. Lottie didn't say a word. Her parents got super concerned. They sent her to a mental institution where the doctors had her do brain stimulation therapy. When she went through these therapy sessions, she did have visions of her walking up a damp hallway with a bunch of candles, but when she did finally wake up from this, she was a different person. She seemed like she was the same Lottie, but actually improved. And she actually looked to help those in the institution around her. She would use the same breathing technique that she used with Travis, the one where he saw the vision. When she became an adult, she seemed to buy a property on a lake. And I don't want to say she was running a cult, but she kind of seemed to be running a retreat / therapy group / let's call it what it is. Looked an awful lot like a cult. And it also looked like the same location where the girls crashed. We're talking woods, lakes, cabins. I mean, that's pretty generic, but still. So that's where Natalie was taken, to one of those cabins. And she doesn't really take too kindly to the fact that she's chained to a bed. When one of Lottie's followers comes in, she brings her food, but says, we chained you up because we were worried you were going to hurt yourself. I wonder where we came up with that idea. Natalie, though, doesn't look to hurt herself. She looks to hurt this girl and escape. She does that, stabbing her in the hand with a fork and running off. She's chased by what look like a few of Lottie's followers, and she heads into the woods. And that's where she comes across a ceremony going on. She gets some heavy flashbacks from her time as a teenager because the people during this ceremony are all wearing animal masks. They unrobe one man, force him to get in a hole, and start digging dirt on him. When Lottie finally makes her appearance, she looks like she's going through this spiritual ceremony, but Natalie comes out of the woods with a stick and starts swinging it. She looks at Lottie and says, give me one reason I shouldn't cave your head in and put it in that hole. And Lottie says, because I have a message for you from Travis. And the final Yellow Jacket that we'll talk about is Taissa, who still needs to be sworn into office. She's getting used to that job, but she's also trying to do damage control at work. She knows that she needs to get Sammy a new dog, so she goes and gets Steve the puppy, where she meets a woman at the shelter who actually campaigned for her. While she appreciates the support, she can't stay long because she has to get over to Sammy's school and try to pick him up before Simone does. She is the first one to get to Sammy, and Sammy's thrilled to see Steve the dog, but when Simone sees that Taissa came to pick him up, she gets pissed off. She tells Sammy to go wait in the car and then reams Taissa out, telling her that she found her little project in the basement, to which Taissa has no idea what Simone is talking about. But Simone is legitimately concerned, not just for Sammy and herself, but for Taissa and her mental health. Something clearly is going on with her, so she gives her an ultimatum. If you don't step down from office and seek treatment for whatever it is that's happening to you, I will have no choice but to go to the press. That night, when Taissa gets home, she decides to go in the basement, snoop around, and she is able to find what Simone was talking about. She's mortified, but sadly, she's not stunned. And for whatever reason, she picks up Steve the dog, showing him, and tells him, hey, this was a mistake. I'll do better with you. I'm sure that'll make Steve the dog feel better. That dude's probably like, you know what? I'm better off at the shelter. Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel and subscribing to my Patreon. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. If you left a comment, I don't get back to you. I usually don't check the comments unless they're like a super comment. Also, if you don't see the next video up on the end screen, not to worry, it'll be up in a day or two.